I feel very grateful and very enlivened to be here with all of you together at UNICEF this morning. I know that for many of us in our work and our personal lives, life can get very busy and it can be easy to lose track of what we're very passionate about. But for me, it's a real honor to be here because I know that every single one of us cares deeply about humanity, cares deeply about all the children on this planet, and cares deeply about having a livable, sustainable home for everyone to live on. And so for me, it's it's really energizing, and I feel very warm-hearted just to be here together. We could be anywhere, and here we are using our lives to be of service. So today I'm going to share my journey of sort of awakening from a life that was not focused on what we're talking about today to a life that's very deeply dedicated to being of service. And then I'm also going to share what we can be doing to transform our lives for those of us that desire to, and share just about some of the campaigns and the work that I'm doing that I invite everyone to be involved in. In 2011, I was living a fairly typical US American lifestyle. I was very focused on material possession and financial wealth. I had a goal of being a millionaire by the time I was 30. So I was 25 at the time. And I was on that path. I was running a marketing company that had a team of people, and we were bringing in that kind of money to get to that place. I was very focused on material possessions. My car, I would spend every Sunday shining it, the rims and the dash, and I was just very focused on achieving what many people call the American dream, to be loved, to be accepted, to be well regarded in this society. And I was on track. I was happy, I was healthy, I had many friends, a great social life, I had romance, I was traveling the world, I was really living my dream. And I could have continued that for the rest of my life, and life would have been good. And then something happened where I realized that I not had to, but really wanted to totally transform my life. Radically transformed my life. And what happened was I started to read a lot of documentaries, or watch a lot of documentaries and read a lot of books. And I learned that the way that I was living was causing such destruction to the earth that almost every action that I was taking was tied to systems of oppression, exploitation, and destruction. The food that I was eating, the car that I was driving, the gas I was pumping into the car, the stuff I was buying, the trash I was creating, every dollar I spent, my investments, my money in the banks. I learned that I had wrapped myself deeply into this web of consumerism, which was a web of not what I believed in. I realized that to a large degree that my life was a lie. I realized that I was living a hypocrisy, which a hypocrisy, another way of saying that is that your actions are not in alignment with your beliefs. And so I never believed in causing such disparity and destruction, and I never believed in supporting systems of oppression and exploitation. But sure enough, here I was doing that through almost every one of my daily actions. We live in a time of such complexity with our globalized, industrialized systems that without realizing it, we're tied to it with most every single thing that we do. And so at that time, I could have felt a great level of despair, depression, overwhelm, disempowerment that every single one of us, I am sure, all of us have experienced that at time. And probably many of us are experiencing that right now. And a lot of us experience it every single day. And I did feel that. I did feel some of that. But actually, more than that, I felt empowered and excited because these documentaries, these books, these activists, humanitarians, organizations, people, they didn't just tell me the problems with the world, they also shared with me solutions for a new way forward. And what I wanted was simple. I wanted to see if I could live in a way that is in harmony with the earth. There's the pictures of us from 2016. Very nice to see. So I wanted to see if I could live in harmony with the earth. And that sounds almost impossible, to many of us, given the situation that we're in. And it's quite radical to actually live in harmony with the earth. But it's also quite simple. It's just a simple concept of, hey, what if we lived in a way that doesn't destroy the only home that we have? That's what I'm talking about. What if we could learn and relearn, forget and relearn our way of being so that we actually are servants to humanity through our daily being and our daily action. So what I set out to do was take my life back. So I'm a person of a very substantial amount of privilege in regards to being born in the United States, having access to education. Even though I grew up very low income, in reality, I have a substantial amount of privilege. And so the way that I looked at it is there's something I can do, and that's I can take responsibility for my own actions. And so what I decided is that one step at a time, I would unravel the web of consumerism, of destruction that I had wrapped myself into. And with each strand that I was breaking, I would create a new strand of sustainability, of equity, of justice, of harmony, which are all, maybe to some people, they're buzzwords, but they all have a deep meaning to them, which for me is, again, living in a way where my actions don't cause unnecessary harm. And so I set out to make one positive change at a time. I made a goal of making at least one positive change per week for 2 years, with the idea being that if I did that, I'd make over 100 positive changes in my life. So I printed out, I wrote up, I printed out a long list, and I hung it up in my kitchen, and I had a pencil that was taped and hanging there, and my goal would be to check off one change per week. So that included small changes like, ditching my paper towels, which were, chopping down the forests and using a reusable washcloths instead, or ditching plastic bottles of water and using a reusable bottle, going to the local farmers market more and minimizing my shopping at the big box stores, starting to walk and ride my bike more and get in the car less, starting to go to a shop where you could fill up your own containers with food rather than all the plastic containers, starting to harvest rainwater and minimize my usage of water. I was living in San Diego where the water was being pumped across the desert, and so I could harvest instead the abundance from the sky. Starting to use my spare time when I wanted to socialize, instead of it being just socializing, volunteering, using my time in a way that's still meeting my needs for belonging and acceptance and meaning and purpose, but finding that in a way that is of service and of benefit. So I was making many small changes, many accessible small changes, but then also making substantial large changes as well. So after a year, I got rid of my car, which maybe for people in New York is like no big deal. But for me, I grew up in a place where if you were an adult and you were wearing regular street clothes and you were riding a bicycle, then people would assume only one thing, and that was you got a DUI, a driving under the influence, and you couldn't drive, and that was the only reason you would bike. And so I was up against a lot of societal norms and a lot of social stigmas, and that was the hardest part. It was, what will people think? How will I be perceived? Will people still take me as credible? And so, but yet I continued to push. After a few years, I took my money out of the big banks and switched to a local credit union, got rid of my credit cards. And after a few years, I actually simplified my life down to having not a bill to my name, and to just continuously simplifying and downsizing so that I could really use my life in the way that I want, rather than be caught in the endless trap of bills and of just all these daily things that take so much time just to manage life. And so Mahatma Gandhi was one of my earliest inspirations, and he said, "Live simply so that others may simply live." And I took that very deeply. When he says live simply so that others may simply live, what I hear is, if we step outside of these systems of destruction by no longer needing them, then just through our daily actions, others are freed to be able to thrive, rather than being oppressed and exploited through these everyday common systems. And so that's been the absolute core for me, is to live very, very simply. And was that a question?
No, sir.
Okay. And some people, of course, look at that and they see that as an act of passivity, passiveness. But as many of us know, that's what many of great leaders have done, is that it's being the change that we wish to see in the world. It's embodying our message, and it's stepping outside of these dominator society ways and bringing in new ways of peacefulness and mindfulness. And so that's what I spent. It was basically a full-time job to unravel what I had started and create a new life. I was easily spending 40 hours a week on changing my life. And so I was fortunate that I was young and I didn't have children yet or a mortgage. And so again, I had that privilege that I could dedicate so much of my time to that. And so at the same time, from the very beginning, my objective was, yes, to embody the change, to be the change. But from the moment that I realized the way that we're influencing the earth, I knew that I wanted to dedicate my whole life to helping others who are wanting to live in harmony as well, to live in service. And so first it was, I wanted to reduce my hypocrisy before I went out and started to talk about this. So when I started, I was at like maybe a level 10 hypocrite. And after those 2 years, I had made over 100 changes. Now I was down to maybe a level 5 hypocrite. Still lots of hypocrisy in my life. But now I really felt that I was being the change that I wished to a fairly substantial degree. So that's when I set out on my environmental activism. My first campaign was to bike across the United States on a bamboo bicycle and try to have no negative environmental impact. That was in 2013, and I biked right here past UNICEF from San Francisco to Vermont. And so from the beginning, my activism has been sort of, you could say, stunts, as you can see from these photos of wearing my trash, which I'll talk to you about shortly. They are stunts. They are campaigns. And so some people could definitely not go deeper and sort of just write them off as this, wanting attention. And I do want attention for the earth, attention for our humanity, attention for the plants and animals. And so my strategy has been to embark on these sort of extreme adventures that are designed to capture the mainstream media's attention, that disproportionately reports on these important issues, and also to capture the attention of the everyday person who is in a sleepy state that doesn't realize a lot of what we're talking about. And so my second campaign was the food waste fiasco. In that one, I biked across the country again, and in each of the major cities, I dove into dozens of grocery store dumpsters, pulled out the perfectly good food that's going to waste, and I laid it out in a mandala, a display to show the tip of the iceberg about how in this country we have $165 billion worth of food going to waste per year. Half of all food in this country is wasted, and globally, 1/3 of all food is wasted. So I was able to create this visual that would help people to understand the big picture of food waste. Another one of my campaigns was landing in a far off country with no money, with just the clothes on my back and passport. And that was the first time I did that was in Mexico. The second time was to Panama. And the third time was in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil is where I landed. And so each time I had to travel on the kindness of others, the goodness of others. And the reason for that is because when you turn on the news, often you will be given a picture that we need to fear our global neighbors. Here in the United States, it's often a picture that we need to fear our neighbors to the south in Mexico. And I don't believe that. I believe that the reality is that the vast majority of human beings they're good, they care about one another. And so in my first travels, it was 37 days to get home. And when I arrived home with literally 10 cents in my pocket, a passport, and just my clothes, the only words that I could mutter out of my mouth were just, people are good. That's all that I could feel. That's all that I could feel. And now the visual that you see on the screen now, this was from a project where for 1 month I lived like the average US American, eating, shopping, consuming, just like, so many of us are used to, but with one big exception. And that was that I had to wear every single piece of trash that I created. So there was no away. Most of us know there is no such thing as away. We live on this one earth. There is no away. But I made that very up close and personal. So every coffee cup, every straw, every wrapper, I had to wear in this clear suit that was designed by a designer to be able to hold up to 135 pounds of garbage, because the average US American creates about 4.5 pounds of trash per day, or about 2 kilos of trash per day. And so at the end of the month, I was wearing 87 pounds of trash, and I was going to the grocery store, riding the metro, I tried to go to the movies, but they wouldn't let me in. So just living a standard life, standing in the grocery store line, and people would come up to me and they would say, "What are you doing?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm just living like the average person." But I'm wearing every piece of trash. And people would look at me and they'd say, "Oh, so that's me. That's what I would look like if I held on to my trash." So my activism is designed there is no right or wrong. There is no good or bad. To the best of my ability, there's no judgment even. It's just about critical thinking. It's about asking questions. So a few of my other campaigns have included living in a 50 square foot and 100 square foot tiny house, with the big idea, does more stuff make us happier? Does a bigger house really make us happier? And my belief is that to some degree, yes. Having our basic needs met is absolutely essential in thriving as individuals, as communities. But for the most part, we've gone so far that our stuff is resulting in depression, anxiety, overwhelm. Some people say we don't own our stuff owns us. And for most of us, that's more along the lines of where we've gotten today. Annie Leonard of The Story of Stuff says, 7 t-shirts, like at that point, maybe one more t-shirt helps. But once we're at 50 t-shirts, one more is not going to give us any more happiness or meaning or purpose. And so in 2020, I simplified my life down to having just 44 possessions, all of which fit into a backpack. And that was about deeply embracing community. It was my way of saying, I need you. I'm not going to own everything that I need. I'm not going to be able to go to my home and forget the rest of the world exists and hide away. This is my way of saying that I absolutely need you, because my belief is that we will only create sustainable community when we embrace that we truly need one another. All of the communities that I've seen that thrive in the world, it's because they embrace we need each other. We are dependent upon one another, and it's intricately built into our lives. Now, my current project that I believe I'm 7 days into right now is for 1 year, I'm foraging 100% of my food. So no grocery stores, no restaurants, not even eating from my friends' gardens or gardens. I'm only eating what I harvest, not from the wild per se, because as you start to deeply connect with the earth, you see that humans and the earth are fully interconnected. There is no separating us. And my belief is that humans are not inherently bad for the earth, that humans can be inherently beneficial to the earth. We're a wonderful species for actually being a keystone species of helping ecosystems to thrive. And we see that clearly by looking at many indigenous cultures. But so this is for me a deep experiment of my belief that the earth can provide us with everything we need in a way that doesn't exploit, that doesn't extract. And I did do a year in 2020 of growing and foraging all of my food. So I have a fair bit of experience in that regard, but now no gardens. Nature is my garden for this year. So again, all of these campaigns, all of these projects, they're designed to do multiple things. One, for me to embody the message, except when I wore my trash. That was the opposite. That was me showing the problem. Most of the time, my objective is to show the solution. My objective is to help us to critically think, to ask deep questions, to open our eyes to what is around us and start to really see it. For me, that includes having relationships with the earth, relationships with the plants and animals, the fungi, includes having relationships with the bacteria. We now know that we're more bacterial cells than we are human cells. I mean, think about that. We are more bacterial cells than we are human cells. We are, as individuals, an interconnected culture of species. And if those bacteria go, we go. So we're starting to really realize how deeply interconnected we are. We are a walking culture in every single moment. And so it's so easy to forget that, but my deep activism is designed to stop us in our tracks, to get us often out of our sleepy states, and to really question. And so my number one question that I like for people to ask is this, really simple. It's, am I living in alignment with my beliefs? Am I living the life that I really want? And if the answer is yes, great, no further work is needed. You're done, keep going. But if the answer is that actually when I ask that question, there's this pit in my stomach and there's this lump in my chest of just knowing that this isn't the way that I want to be in relationship, then what can we do differently? And that's where it's about using our lives effectively as change. And for me, I'm celebrating every single one of us here, because here we are at UNICEF. Every single one of us cares deeply. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. Even when we get wrapped up, it's a lot to maintain a career and a home and the bills and family and everything. But I know every single one of us cares deeply and already asks those questions. So with us, this is a reminder to remember asking those questions. And so I'll say a handful more things, maybe speak for another 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'd love to open it up to questions. I want to share a little bit more about my life in regards to how I go about existing on this earth in using life as a means of service. I also, with that, want to share that I feel somewhat self-conscious talking about myself so much. But my thing is that, as I said, my strategy is for my life to be my message. And so that is when your life objective is to take responsibility for your own everything, it means a lot of focus on that. The whole focus is to be of service and to be involved in community. So as far as my form of my objective from the beginning was to see if I could use every ounce of my being to be of service. That's been the last 14 years of my life. And I have found that it's very hard to do because the society has set it up to be the opposite. We're set up where there's often so few minutes left in our day after all of our tasks. And so some of my objectives or some of my ways of going about that, in 2015, I started to make a series of vows. Some of them are lifetime vows, and some of them are vows that I make every 4 years along with the presidential cycle. I've made a lifetime vow to earning below the federal poverty threshold, which in the United States, when I made that vow, was $11,000, to keeping my net worth to a bare minimum, to donating 100% of my media income to grassroots nonprofits and activists who are doing this work, primarily Indigenous and Black-led organizations and individuals. And that is all the strategy of living simply. The other aspect of my vows is transparency. I believe that if all of our politicians and all of our corporations and all of our municipalities acted with deep transparency, that a lot of our issues would be solved overnight. Transparency is such a key one. And so in just last year, through multiple years of working on this, as I mentioned, I downsized my physical possessions while I also did substantial work to downsize my mind. And as of last year, I accomplished sharing every single thing that I had in my mind, which I was guarding, hiding, anything I was embarrassed of, a secret. So as my dedication as a leader, it's that my mind is fully accessible. So if you've heard of the term Creative Commons means it's publicly owned. Well, my mind, I'm experimenting with making my mind publicly owned. I'm experimenting with not owning my own mind. And the best way that I know how to do that to start is to have nothing in here that is not freely accessible. Now, I will say, so I accomplished that in last year. And for 4 months, I had nothing that was hidden. I was offline. I hadn't, which my team managed the internet things. But then once I got back online, I now know the passwords to our accounts. So technically, I do have a little bit in here that's not fully public. But beyond that, that's it. And so I believe deeply in the practice of transparency and truth. So I'd like to share a few of the projects that we're working on that many of them are very in alignment with the projects that you're working on. One that we started in 2019 was, it's called Seeds for the People. So we provide what we started as a seed pack that in one little pack, there's a variety of 20 greens and vegetables and herbs, and as well as flowers that are beneficial for pollinators and bees. And we send this to anybody who doesn't otherwise have access to seeds to grow food. Whether it's financial barriers or physical barriers, our priority is always on providing this to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to grow food. And over the last 7 years, we've sent these packs to 40,000 people. This has been in the United States because shipping internationally seeds is very difficult. So this has been a US-based program. And so we've turned $80,000 into $3 million worth of seeds. If all of these 40,000 people had purchased the seeds themselves, it would have cost $3 million. And then those seeds have created the potential to grow $16 million worth of food. So what I try to do with our programs, we work on a very grassroots budget, very small. My nonprofit, which is called Regeneration, Equity, and Justice, we generally have a budget of like $150,000 to $200,000 a year. So we try to use our resources really, really effectively. And so that's one of our programs. We shifted to recently Seeds for Schools, so primarily providing seeds to organizations that benefit children to help them to grow their own food. We really believe in the power of nurturing children through relationships with food that they're growing. We really believe that's one of the most empowering things, is to have that autonomy and to see the miracle of a seed turning into food that's nourishing ourselves, and some of the most nourishing food that there is. Another program we started is called Gardens for Single Moms, which is we would build gardens for single parent families to help them to grow their own nourishing food and have empowerment in that way. A program called Community Compost. So we would like to see composting happening on a small grassroots level that has no real strong infrastructure needed, that can be done. Ideally, there's, community compost programs within walking distance or cycling distance of everyone's homes in different cities. And so we started a program called Community Compost, which has a template step-by-step that shows others how they can start these programs in their community, whether it's a high schooler with a little bit of spare time and that just has a bicycle, or someone who wants to create a business from it using a pickup truck and a larger program. One of our more unique programs is the Grow Your Own Toilet Paper Initiative, and we grow a plant called Plectranthus barbatus, which is also called the blue spur flower. In Kenya, it's actually called Kikuyu toilet paper because the Kikuyu tribe has, used it as a toilet paper for many years, hundreds of years, and it grows natively from India through parts of the Middle East down through much of Africa. I was fortunate to live in Orlando, Florida, which has a very large, diverse population of Caribbeans and Africans and Asians. And I came across this plant, and it's the most wonderful toilet paper plant. It produces leaves that are about the size of a piece of toilet paper. They're as soft as can be. They're durable. And they have really genuinely been used by millions of people around the world. In Brazil, it's called boldo or boldo gaucho. And you can actually make tea from it as well. Of course, separate leaves for tea and toilet paper, of course. And so, but a big part of that program is it's about raising awareness about composting toilets. So the concept of humanure, which is we have limited fresh water. And in many places, there isn't fresh water. And sanitation can be a very large issue when it comes to human poop and pee. And compost toilets are a really powerful, effective, very low infrastructure, low cost. I believe that if there was one change that I could instigate in the world that I think would make the largest change practically overnight or within a year, it would be that 8 billion human beings are composting their poop, meaning all of that would turn into soil that would nourish the earth, which would mean we would no longer need these chemical fertilizers, and we would no longer have to be exploiting the earth for these, and we'd actually be building our soil, reducing erosion, growing food, and it can all be done safely and sustainably. if you're really interested in learning about that, there's a book called the Humanure Handbook, which teaches all about it. And if you enjoy me, you'll enjoy that author as well. His name is Joseph Jenkins, and he goes by the Duke of Duty as well. So, and then we also have a program called the Food Forest Starter Bundle. So we're very passionate about food forestry. So basically, a food forest is mimicking what nature does. It's 7 layers from food growing on the ground all the way up into the upper canopy that creates ecosystem services for the plants, for the animals, for the humans. And these can be done in cities. I was just at Boston Food Forest Coalition a couple days ago, where they have 15 food forests in Boston. And so these are designed to be spaces for community. And when I say community, I'm talking about humans, but also the plants and animals are our community. And so we created this program called the Food Forest Starter Bundle, where we provide about 30 varieties of seeds and cuttings, where you can receive this as one package, and it's enough to start a food forest with the teachings of how you can then duplicate those seeds and cuttings. You can start to be your own little hub of spreading forests throughout. And then the last program that I'd like to talk about is called Community Fruit Trees, which I know that many of you are passionate about planting fruit trees and see how important of a solution this is. So Community Fruit Trees, we started in 2018 in Orlando, Florida. We've planted 2,000 trees over the last handful of years. Community fruit trees are designed to be publicly accessible. Anyone has access to the food. Of course, our objective is to provide them to people who don't have access to delicious and nutritious local fruits. And then also to be planting them in areas where just the existence of those trees really provides joy and meaning and purpose. And so our limiting factor has been money, because buying trees, well, they're $20 to $40 a piece. So if you want to plant 1 million trees, we're talking $20 to $40 million just for the cost of trees. So recently, I just launched the 1 Million Community Fruit Trees Initiative. What we're doing now is we are growing our trees through a grassroots collaborative effort, through a community, a micro nursery initiative. And our number one inspiration is Wangari Maathai. Many of you know of her. She started the Green Belt movement. She was a UN messenger of peace. And the Green Belt movement has planted 51 million trees, and in a very grassroots way. So we are modeling ourselves off of that. What we have is we create these 4 foot by 8 foot raised beds that you can plant about 1,000 trees in. So imagine the length of this table, you can plant about 2,000 trees in these nurseries using seeds and cuttings. So the cost is almost nothing. You can harvest these seeds and cuttings right in your own community. And then it takes 1 year for the trees to be ready to plant. And then we will distribute these trees locally in the community to anybody who wants to grow them. And we can also ship them as well. So over the next year, our focus is to create 100 of these micro nurseries. So anybody who wants to create them, our objective is to provide the template, the exact details with video and written templates on how to do this. And our objective is through a very grassroots collaborative effort to plant 1 million community fruit and nut trees over the next decade. And that's about food security. It's about food sovereignty. It's about environmental restoration. So this is going to help with decreasing heat in urban environments. It's going to help with reducing erosion and runoff. It's going to create a sense of community. That's the name, Community Fruit Trees. It's about bringing people together and having a shared sense. That's why we like to plant in public spaces where we dissolve the idea of ownership, and instead it's community ownership. So a few So I would like to share a few notes on some things as far as bringing sustainability. Oh,
No.
As far as bringing sustainability into your personal and professional life, I'll just share a few things because I want to leave more time for questions. But some of my top things for bringing into our own lives would be reducing our waste, looking at all the ways that we're creating trash and seeing if there's ways that we can do things differently. Great way to do that is look in your garbage can and see what's in here, and then see how we can do things differently. We can compost. That's a really big one. Making sure that our plants and animals don't go into the landfill. Think of all the plants and animals as our friends, and making sure we don't put our friends in the garbage can. We can shop local, so minimize the money that we're sending outside of our community and as much as possible into our community. We can grow some of our own food, even if it's just tomatoes and herbs on our balcony, growing a little bit of our own food. We can forage, so we can learn the plants that are growing right in our community. Right here in New York City, outside of UNICEF, I can show you a dozen plants within a block of here that are growing food that many people walk by every single day and don't know. We can divest, so we can take our money out of destructive investments and invest in the now. This is a beautiful practice for me, nonviolent communication. This has been one of the most powerful resources that I encourage you to look into. This is a language of life for existing in a way that is compassionate with our colleagues, with our friends, with our family. Other books that I really love, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Kimmerer. This book is a guiding force for living in harmony with the earth. Thich Nhat Hanh, one of his practices is to walk as if every step we are kissing Mother Earth. We're kissing the earth through every step. Imagine if we walked down our cities with every step so mindful. So I like to put it also as a greeting to Mother Earth with every step. So Thich Nhat Hanh, I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with. And I love this little book called The Thanksgiving Address, which is by the Haudenosaunee people. They've been giving this address for 1,000 years. And I believe that if we lived our life by this very simple address, if we led our organizations and our movements by this simple greetings to the natural world, that so many of our problems would be so drastically decreased. On my website at robingreenfield.org/books, you can see a list of books that I recommend. I have at robingreenfield.org/100. That is my top. That's the first 100 changes that I made. So it's all right there. You could print that out and use that as your own checklist. And at /timeline, that's my timeline of transformation, documenting all of this to help others who are wanting to, go on a similar journey. If you're interested in partnering with community fruit trees, we're looking for, organizations, individuals, communities around the world that would like to plant trees together. You can go to robingreenfield.org/community fruit trees. My current project of foraging, that's at /foraging year. And my website is an absolute plethora of resources for being change that you wish to see in the world. And I will say though, it's a rabbit hole, and you might end up spending quite a few hours once you're there. So yeah, on that note, what I would like to say is to kind of close this is that I'm really, really passionate about investing in our future as a humanity, but not through IRAs, not through personal savings, but through clean air, through fresh water. That is what we need now, and it's what we'll need in the future too. So when we divest, it's about putting all of these into, our future is uncertain as a humanity. There's no question about that. But we know, all of us believe that life matters. We all value life. And some people would say, with the daunting times we live in, why try? And every single one of us believes, though, that the life of every children on this planet really matters, and we truly value that. So what if we can use our lives in a way where we invest in the present moment and do that in a way that also invests in our future? So that would be one of my encouragements, is to find a way to use our lives both here in work and at home in our schools so that we're investing in our future while making that positive impact in the now. And the last thing that I'll say along that is a big focus is that we have so much in harmony and alignment is embracing biodiversity. The earth runs on biodiversity, on diversity within our humanity. Those two things are completely interconnected, and community. An activist in New York, her name's Amanda David, really powerful when she said to me that the solutions to all of our societal woes lie in community. So embracing community as part of the solution. And a big part of that is finding a home on this earth, really believing that this is our home. This is our home. And right here inside of ourselves, this is our home as well. When we can find a home inside of ourselves, when we can love ourselves, like Mr. Rogers says, I like you just the way we are. We will never like others just the way they are and accept them unless we accept ourselves. So there's so much work for us to do as individuals as well, to find that home inside of ourselves, to love ourselves. And as we do that, the hate will be dismantled, and I believe we'll find ourselves to be more powerful and effective servants here through UNICEF, through our daily life, if we can act from a place of truly loving and caring for the earth.